Deep inside the Nouabalé-Ndoki rainforest of the Republic of the Congo, the body of an adult female gorilla lay twisted beneath the roots of a fallen tree. Her head had collapsed backward at an unnatural angle. The neck had been ripped open from beneath the jaw to the shoulders. Thick muscle had separated, damaged bone was visible, and only a narrow section of skin along the back of the neck kept the head attached to the body. Several deep punctures appeared on both sides of the throat, but most of the body remained untouched. The abdomen had not been opened. Both legs were present. Nothing appeared to have been removed. Whatever happened here had focused almost entirely on the neck, and the surrounding forest showed that the violence had begun somewhere else. Plants had been crushed into the mud, vines were pulled down, and broken branches formed a trail toward the fallen tree. The gorilla had been moved after the attack. Less than a kilometer away, two wildlife trackers were approaching the family's nesting site. They had followed these gorillas for years and knew individual animals by their faces, scars, movements, and personalities. But that morning, something was wrong. A gorilla family is rarely silent after sunrise. Normally, branches break as animals feed and low calls pass between members of the group. This morning, there was almost nothing. The trackers found the silverback standing rigid near the nesting site. He didn't charge. He didn't beat his chest. He simply stared toward one section of vegetation. The rest of the family was scattered. Juveniles remained close to their mothers. Nobody was feeding. And one adult female was missing. She was the group's second-ranking female and the mother of a nursing infant. One tracker discovered flattened vegetation leading away from the nest. The two men followed it down a shallow slope until they reached the fallen tree. There lay the missing female. They immediately contacted the research station and secured the area. Soon, primatologists and a veterinarian arrived. Now they faced one disturbing question. What is capable of doing that to a full-grown gorilla? An adult female gorilla can weigh more than 200 pounds and has enough strength to seriously injure most animals approaching her. More importantly, she had been sleeping near a silverback and several other adults. Whatever attacked her had entered a protected family group, isolated her, and escaped before the others could stop it. The first suspect was another gorilla. Rival silverbacks can fight violently and may injure females during attempts to take over a group, but investigators quickly found problems with that theory. There was no second set of gorilla tracks. The resident silverback showed no wounds suggesting a recent fight, and the victim's injuries didn't resemble typical gorilla bites. Those tend to be broad, crushing, and irregular. These punctures were narrow and closely grouped. The next possibility was chimpanzees. Chimpanzees can be extremely aggressive and sometimes hunt other primates, but they usually target smaller animals. An adult female gorilla would be an extremely dangerous target, and the wounds didn't resemble a typical chimpanzee attack. Then, investigators considered humans. Poachers were a serious possibility, but again, the evidence didn't fit. There were no snare marks, no rope fibers, no blade wounds, no boot prints, no discarded objects. Nothing suggested that humans had entered the scene. That left researchers with a possibility that seemed almost impossible. For decades, healthy adult gorillas were considered animals with virtually no natural predators. They're large, extraordinarily strong, and protected by a social structure built around collective defense. Yet one researcher remembered seeing wounds like these before, and she wasn't the only one. To understand this death, the team had to look beyond this forest. Decades earlier, in the volcanic highlands near Congo and Rwanda, another gorilla had been discovered with precise punctures near the base of the neck. Later, another body appeared with a similar injury. Elsewhere in Central Africa, researchers documented additional gorilla remains carrying comparable wounds. And there was another clue. Full-grown gorillas that appeared fearless around most animals became visibly alarmed when they detected the scent of one particular predator. Different gorilla populations, separated by hundreds of miles, seemed to recognize the same danger. Eventually, wider surveys began revealing a pattern. Some gorillas had not simply been scavenged after death, they had been actively hunted. Even silverbacks were not completely immune, and some encounters were violent. In one documented confrontation, researchers found crushed vegetation, claw marks in trees, and blood scattered across a large area. The gorilla had fought back. In another extreme case, two bodies were reportedly discovered together, one gorilla and one large predator, both dead. Neither had backed down. Now, standing over the female in Nouabalé-Ndoki, the evidence began fitting together. The neck wounds, the drag trail, the lack of human evidence, the absence of another gorilla, and an attacker capable of reaching the family without leaving an obvious trail across the forest floor. The answer still seemed physically wrong. The predator was smaller than the victim, much smaller. In an open confrontation, it would face enormous danger against an alert gorilla, so it survived by avoiding that confrontation entirely. The predator was a leopard. The identification didn't depend on one dramatic clue. Every small detail supported the others. The tightly grouped wounds matched an attack focused on the throat. The drag marks showed an attempt to move the body. And the lack of an obvious approach trail suggested the attacker hadn't simply walked toward the family across open ground. A leopard doesn't need to. It can use leaning trunks and low branches, moving through parts of the forest that a ground-dwelling animal cannot. Its spotted coat disappears into the mixture of shadow and filtered light. It can remain motionless for long periods, waiting for exactly the right moment. Even the silverback's strange behavior now made sense. He hadn't been watching the ground for a rival gorilla. His attention remained higher in the vegetation. The leopard may have descended extremely close to the nest without exposing itself. The female was likely caught during a moment of confusion. Instead of challenging the gorilla's strength directly, the leopard attacked the one area capable of ending the fight quickly, the neck. That is critical when attacking an animal several times your own weight. The female apparently struggled to escape. But if the leopard maintained its grip while she pulled in the opposite direction, the original neck injury could have become catastrophic. When her body became caught near the roots, the struggle placed even greater force on the damaged neck. That explains why her head remained attached by only a narrow section of skin. But another question remained. Why hadn't the leopard eaten the rest of the body? Because killing a gorilla and safely feeding on one are completely different problems. The female was too large to carry into a tree like smaller prey, and the rest of the gorilla family was still nearby. An agitated silverback could turn a feeding attempt into another dangerous confrontation, so the leopard abandoned the body. What investigators discovered wasn't evidence of some unknown monster. It was a known predator using the advantage that matters when physical strength isn't enough: concealment. A male leopard may weigh less than half as much as an adult female gorilla. Face to face, that difference puts the leopard at enormous risk. So it doesn't fight on the gorilla's terms. It waits until size matters least. It remains hidden. It closes the distance before the victim can react. And it attacks the neck before a true contest of strength can begin. But that doesn't make the leopard unbeatable. Gorillas that detect one early can confront it or drive it away. That's why successful attacks depend heavily on opportunity. An alert gorilla surrounded by its family in daylight is an extremely dangerous target. One isolated for only a few seconds in poor light is different. The leopard's entire strategy depends on remaining unseen until the final moment. The researchers entered the forest asking what could leave a powerful gorilla with its head hanging from a narrow strip of skin. By the end of the investigation, they faced a more disturbing question. If a leopard can attack silently, disappear into the forest, and leave so little evidence behind, how many times has this happened without anyone ever finding the body?